It is a winter morning in January 1917. Snow lies thin along the streets of Cleveland, Ohio, pressed flat by carriage wheels and the new rubber tires of motor cars. Factory whistles cut through the cold air just after 6 o'clock, their sound echoing across brick neighborhoods built close to steel mills and rail yards. Inside small wood-framed houses, coal stoves crackle as families rise before daylight. Men pull on heavy wool coats, women tie aprons over long skirts, children lace boots stiff from the cold. Newspapers are folded under arms, carrying reports from Europe printed beside advertisements for soap, tobacco, and sewing machines. For most Americans, this morning begins like countless others before it. The war across the Atlantic feels distant, almost unreal, spoken of in headlines but not yet in daily routine. Yet beneath the quiet rhythm of ordinary life, forces already in motion are drawing the nation toward a transformation that will touch every household, every workplace, and every hour of the American day. At the opening of the 20th century, the United States is a country in transition. Its population has passed 100 million. Cities grow upward and outward, fed by migration from rural America and by immigrants arriving from Europe in numbers unmatched in previous generations. In 1914, when war erupts overseas following the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the United States declares neutrality. President Woodrow Wilson addresses the nation on August 19, urging Americans to remain impartial not only in action but in thought. For many citizens, neutrality aligns with instinct. The country has not fought a major foreign war since 1898, and Europe's rivalries feel old, tangled, and far away. Daily life continues much as it has, governed by work schedules, church calendars, school terms, and seasonal routines. For working Americans, the day is long and physically demanding. Industrial labor dominates urban life. Steel mills, meatpacking plants, textile factories, and railroads operate 6 days a week. 10-hour shifts are common. Safety regulations are limited and injuries frequent. A man leaving for work before sunrise may return home after dark, his clothes smelling of oil, smoke, or chemicals. Wages vary sharply. Skilled workers earn enough to support families modestly. Unskilled laborers often struggle, especially during winter months when layoffs are common. Women work both inside and outside the home, as garment workers, domestic servants, clerks, and teachers. Children, though increasingly protected by child labor laws, are still found in mills, farms, and shops, especially in poorer families. Food is simple and repetitive for most households. Bread, potatoes, beans, and seasonal vegetables form the core of daily meals. Meat is consumed sparingly by working-class families, more frequently by those with higher incomes. Milk is delivered door-to-door in glass bottles. Iceboxes preserve perishables with blocks of ice cut from frozen lakes or manufactured in ice plants. Refrigeration exists but is rare. Shopping is done daily or weekly at neighborhood grocers, bakeries, and butcher shops. Credit is informal, often based on trust and reputation. Transportation shapes the pace of life. Streetcars carry workers across cities for a nickel. Horse-drawn wagons still deliver coal and goods, though automobiles are increasingly visible. In 1914, fewer than 2 million cars are registered nationwide, but their presence signals change. Rural Americans rely on trains to reach markets and towns, and on dirt roads that turn to mud in spring and ice in winter. Communication moves at the speed of print and telegraph. News from Europe arrives days late, filtered through cables and editors' judgments. As war rages overseas through 1915 and 1916, its influence begins to seep into American routines. Factories receive orders for weapons, ammunition, uniforms, and food destined for Allied nations. Though officially neutral, the United States trades heavily with Britain and France. Industrial output increases. Employment rises in manufacturing centers. For some workers, wages improve slightly, though inflation soon follows. Newspapers publish casualty lists from European armies, and photographs of trench warfare appear in illustrated magazines. Churches organize prayer services for peace. Immigrant communities follow the conflict closely, divided by ties to homelands now at war with one another. The war's presence is felt most strongly along the Atlantic seaboard. German submarines sink merchant ships carrying American goods. The Lusitania sinking in May 1915, with the loss of 128 American lives, shocks the nation. Though the United States remains out of the conflict, conversations in homes, factories, and streetcars grow more urgent. Neutrality becomes harder to sustain emotionally, even as daily life continues. By early 1917, events accelerate. Germany resumes unrestricted submarine warfare in January, targeting all ships bound for Allied ports. In February, British intelligence reveals the Zimmermann telegram, in which Germany proposes an alliance with Mexico against the United States. Public opinion shifts rapidly. On April 2, 1917, President Wilson addresses Congress, declaring that the world must be made safe for democracy. 4 days later, the United States enters the war. The declaration does not immediately alter the appearance of American streets, but it transforms the rhythm beneath them. Mobilization begins at once. The Selective Service Act is passed in May 1917, requiring men between the ages of 21 and 30 to register for military service, later expanded to ages 18 to 45. Registration days become national events. Men line up at courthouses, post offices, and schools, watched by neighbors and family members. Exemptions exist for dependency and essential occupations, but service becomes a shared expectation. Military camps rise quickly across the country. Places like Camp Funston in Kansas, Camp Lewis in Washington, and Camp Dix in New Jersey bring thousands of young men into training. Towns near these camps experience sudden growth. Local economies adjust to new demands for food, housing, and entertainment. Families write letters daily, learning to navigate censorship rules that limit what soldiers can describe. The Postal Service expands to handle the surge in mail, making correspondence a vital emotional link between home and front. At home, civilian life reorganizes around the needs of war. The federal government creates new agencies to manage production and resources. The War Industries Board coordinates manufacturing, directing factories to prioritize military contracts. Standardization becomes common, reducing the variety of consumer goods to conserve materials. Steel, copper, rubber, and coal are regulated. Prices rise. Scarcity becomes familiar. Food occupies a central place in daily consciousness. Herbert Hoover is appointed head of the U.S. Food Administration. Rather than rationing by law, the administration appeals to patriotism. Households are urged to observe meatless Mondays and wheatless Wednesdays. Posters appear in shop windows and schools, encouraging citizens to conserve sugar, fats, and flour. Home cooks adjust recipes, substituting cornmeal for wheat and stretching meat with vegetables. Victory gardens appear in backyards, vacant lots, and schoolyards, producing millions of pounds of food by 1918. Women assume expanded roles as men enter military service. In factories, women take positions as machinists, welders, and assembly workers, jobs previously closed to them. Though often paid less than men, their presence alters workplace dynamics. Women also serve as nurses, clerks, and telephone operators for the military. Volunteer organizations such as the American Red Cross mobilize millions of women to knit socks, roll bandages, and raise funds. Daily schedules grow fuller, blending paid labor, volunteer work, and household responsibilities. Children experience the war through school programs and community activities. Schools teach lessons on patriotism and conservation. Students collect scrap metal, rubber, and paper for recycling. Liberty Loan drives become events involving entire neighborhoods. Children march in parades, sing patriotic songs, and learn to associate sacrifice with citizenship. Entertainment continues, though its tone shifts. Motion picture theaters show newsreels alongside dramas and comedies. Films emphasize heroism and national unity. Popular music reflects wartime themes, with songs about soldiers, home, and duty. Baseball continues, though players enlist and schedules are adjusted. President Wilson supports the continuation of the sport, believing it essential to morale. Government influence reaches deeply into personal expression. The Espionage Act of 1917 and the Sedition Act of 1918 restrict speech deemed harmful to the war effort. Newspapers are monitored. Individuals who criticize the government or oppose the war face fines or imprisonment. The atmosphere becomes tense, particularly for immigrants from Germany and Austria-Hungary. German-language newspapers close. Schools stop teaching German. Families anglicize surnames. Sauerkraut becomes Liberty cabbage. Loyalty is measured publicly, often harshly. African Americans experience the war within the constraints of segregation. Approximately 350,000 black men serve in the armed forces, mostly in segregated units. At home, the war accelerates the Great Migration, as black workers move from the rural South to northern cities seeking industrial jobs. Daily life in these cities brings new opportunities alongside overcrowding, discrimination, and tension. The summer of 1919 will see violent racial unrest. But during the war years, Labor demand temporarily opens doors previously closed. Religious life adapts to wartime conditions. Churches organize prayer services for soldiers and relief efforts for Europe. Sermons emphasize duty, sacrifice, and moral purpose. Some religious groups, particularly pacifist denominations, struggle to reconcile beliefs with national expectations. Conscientious objectors face legal challenges and social pressure. Health becomes a growing concern. Military camps struggle with sanitation and disease. In 1918, influenza emerges, spreading rapidly through camps and cities alike. The epidemic disrupts daily life more than any other wartime measure. Schools, theaters, and churches close. Public gatherings are banned in many cities. Hospitals are overwhelmed. Families nurse the sick at home, often without effective treatment. By the end of the pandemic, hundreds of thousands of Americans will have died, leaving a mark deeper than the war itself. Throughout 1918, the pace of life remains intense. Work hours lengthen. Night shifts become common. Railroads are placed under federal control to ensure efficient transport. Time itself feels regulated, measured by production quotas, train schedules, and deadlines. Letters from Europe carry news of trench warfare, casualties, and endurance. Gold star flags appear in windows, marking families who have lost sons. When the armistice is signed on November 11, 1918, celebrations erupt spontaneously. Factory whistles sound without pause. Crowds fill streets singing and cheering, yet daily life does not immediately return to its earlier patterns. Soldiers come home gradually, many bearing physical and psychological wounds. Jobs must be reclaimed or renegotiated. Prices remain high. Influenza lingers. The nation enters a period of adjustment, shaped by experiences shared across social lines. Daily life during World War I America is defined not by battlefields, but by kitchens, factories, schools, and streets. It is shaped by early mornings, rationed meals, long shifts, handwritten letters, and quiet acts of endurance. The war reaches into ordinary hours, altering habits, expectations, and identities. When peace arrives, it leaves behind a country changed, carrying forward lessons learned not only through sacrifice abroad, but through the steady, disciplined persistence of life at home.